The old smell of my father's cologne, a mix of oak and regret, filled the air as he rushed out the door again. "Business trip," he'd say, kissing my mother on the cheek and leaving a $5 bill for me on the counter. My mother, beautiful and naive, would smile. I knew better. His business trips always coincided with weekends. He'd come back on Sunday nights, tired but smelling of something different, something sweet and feminine that wasn't my mother's perfume. I was 16, a ghost in my own home, and I saw everything. The hushed phone calls, the way he'd flinch when my mom touched his phone, the carefully folded suit jacket that smelled of foreign laundry detergent. My father was a man of routines, and his routines were starting to unravel. One Friday, as he was packing his bag, I saw a crumpled receipt fall out of his pocket. It was from a toy store, for a doll. My heart ached, a cold, sharp pain. My father was a liar, and I was about to prove it. The receipt was for a store in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. The address led me to a quiet suburb, miles away from our own perfectly manicured lawn. I took the subway there, my stomach a knot of dread and excitement. When I got off, the world felt different. Smaller, cozier. The houses were older, the streets lined with blooming cherry trees. I found the toy store and looked inside. The store owner smiled at me. "Can I help you, sweetie?" she asked. "My dad bought a doll here last week," I lied, "for my little sister, but she wants a different one." The woman's face lit up. "Oh, the big, beautiful doll with the red dress? Yes, your dad picked out a lovely one. He said it was for his little girl, Ella." My breath hitched. Ella. My name was not Ella. My world was about to change forever. If you like this story, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters. I sat on a park bench across the street from the toy store, the name Ella echoing in my mind. It was a cold, hard fact. He had another family, another life. I pulled out my phone and searched for the address on the receipt. It was a few blocks away. My legs felt heavy, but my anger propelled me forward. I walked, my mind racing. What would I do? What would I say? I didn't have a plan, only a burning desire to see the truth with my own eyes. I found the house. It was a small 2-story home with a tidy garden. A red swing set was in the yard. The blinds were open, and I could see a little girl with pigtails playing with a doll in the living room. Her hair was the same shade of brown as my father's. My heart twisted. A woman, her face kind and tired, was watching the girl with a gentle smile. She had my mother's eyes, but they were filled with a different kind of happiness, one that my father had given her. I felt a new kind of power surge through me, not a righteous power, but a dark, intoxicating one. I didn't knock on the door or scream. I didn't confront him. I went home and started digging. I found more receipts, old greeting cards, and a second set of keys hidden in his desk drawer. The key had a small, handwritten tag attached to it, 36 Oak Street. The house I had just seen. My father had built a life, a family, a whole world on a foundation of lies. And I, his forgotten daughter, was holding the blueprint. The anger inside me solidified into a plan. A cold, calculated plan to use his deceit to get what I wanted. I wasn't just his daughter anymore. I was his judge, and I was about to sentence him to a lifetime of silent payments. The first test was easy. I waited for my father to come home from his business trip on Sunday night. He was tired, his tie loose, a faint scent of cheap perfume clinging to his shirt. I cornered him in the kitchen, a glass of milk in my hand. "How was your trip?" I asked, my voice sweet and innocent. He smiled. "Good, honey, a little busy." I took a sip of my milk, letting the silence hang in the air. "I found a receipt in your pocket the other day," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "From a toy store. For a doll." He froze. His smile vanished. His eyes, usually so confident and warm, were now filled with a cold panic. "That was for a client's daughter," he stammered, his words fumbling over each other. "A business gift." I placed the glass of milk on the counter, the sound sharp and final. "Her name is Ella, right? And she lives on Oak Street?" The color drained from his face. He looked at me, a mixture of fear and betrayal in his eyes. He didn't ask how I knew. He knew I knew. "What do you want?" he whispered, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I smiled, a small, triumphant smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I want to go to that art school in New York," I said, my voice firm. "The one you said was too expensive." His jaw clenched. He looked at the floor, then back at me. He was trapped, and we both knew it. "I'll do it," he said, his voice a broken whisper. "But you can never tell your mother. Ever." I nodded. "Of course not, Dad." The deal was done. The truth was my weapon, and I was just getting started. I had found his weakness, and I planned on exploiting it for the rest of his life. My father kept his end of the bargain. The acceptance letter from the New York Art School arrived a few weeks later, along with a check for the first semester's tuition. My mother was ecstatic, tearfully hugging me and telling me how proud she was. She had no idea of the transaction that had taken place. My father, on the other hand, was a different man. He was distant, his eyes always scanning the room for me, a flicker of fear in them. He was a puppet, and I was the puppeteer. The joy of getting into my dream school was quickly overshadowed by the power I held over him. I started small, requesting a new car, a shopping spree, a trip to Europe. Each request was met with a sigh and a defeated nod. He would find a way to explain the sudden influx of money to my mother, a new client, a promotion, a lucky break. She always believed him. My life became a lavish dream built on my father's lies. I lived in a beautiful apartment in New York, surrounded by luxury. But the joy was hollow. My father's misery was my currency. His face, etched with worry and guilt, was a constant reminder of my power. One day, he tried to push back. He told me he couldn't afford to keep up with my demands. "I have another family to support," he said, the words full of a desperate sadness. I laughed, a cold, hard sound. "That's not my problem, Dad. You chose to have another family. You chose to lie. I'm just getting my fair share." He looked at me then, truly looked at me, and I saw a flash of disgust in his eyes. It was a look I would never forget. The relationship between us, once strained, was now a toxic exchange of money and resentment. The thrill of power was wearing off, leaving a bitter aftertaste. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video. Your support helps us create more content like this. I was a master of manipulation. I knew my father's schedule better than he did. I knew when he was with his other family, and I knew when he was at home. I would call him at the most inconvenient times, a casual question about his day or a new request. I knew his other wife's name was Clara, and their daughter Ella was 6 years old. I found out where they went for their family vacations, where they ate dinner on Tuesdays, and what school Ella attended. I knew every detail of the life he was trying to hide, and I used it to keep him in line. The power was intoxicating, but it also made me lonely. I had friends in New York, but I kept them at arm's length. How could I explain my lifestyle? I was a princess, but my kingdom was built on a lie. The guilt was a subtle, persistent ache. It was a whisper in the back of my mind, a ghost of the person I used to be. The girl who loved her father, who believed in his goodness. That girl was gone, replaced by a calculating opportunist. One night, I saw a picture of my father, Clara, and Ella on a social media account of one of Clara's friends. They were at the park, laughing. My father was pushing Ella on the swing, his face filled with a pure, unadulterated joy that I had never seen directed at me. A wave of bitterness washed over me. He had a family where he could be happy, where he could be a good father. He had chosen them, and I was just a ghost from his other life, a price he had to pay for his happiness. The realization didn't make me stop. It only made me angrier. My blackmail wasn't just about money anymore. It was about revenge. My father's health began to decline. The stress of his double life was taking its toll. He was losing weight, his hair was graying faster, and he had a constant tremor in his hands. My mother, oblivious to the truth, was worried. She attributed it to overwork and stress from his job. "He's just so dedicated," she'd say, a sad smile on her face. I knew the truth, and I felt a flicker of something close to pity. But the feeling was fleeting, quickly replaced by a cold satisfaction. This was his punishment. He had chosen this path, and now he was paying the price. My demands became more frequent, more extravagant. A new apartment, a fancy car, designer clothes. I was pushing him to his breaking point. I wanted to see how far I could go before he finally snapped. The final straw was a text I sent him on a Sunday morning. "I need $5,000 for a trip to Italy. I'm leaving next week." I knew he was with Clara and Ella. I knew he would have to find a way to get the money without raising suspicion. He didn't respond for hours. I knew I had gone too far. When he finally called, his voice was thin and weak. "I can't," he said, his voice breaking. I can't do it." My blood ran cold. The power I had held for so long was slipping through my fingers. "Don't you dare tell me you can't," I hissed, my voice low and menacing. "I'll tell Mom everything. I'll tell Clara and Ella everything. You'll lose them both." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I know," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I already lost." The call ended. I didn't know it then, but this was the beginning of my downfall. The day I found out he was gone was a Tuesday. My mother called me, her voice a mix of confusion and fear. "He didn't come home last night," she said, her voice shaking. "I can't reach him." My heart, a lump of ice in my chest, didn't melt. I felt nothing but a cold, hollow dread. I knew he was with them. The police found him a few hours later. He had a heart attack in his car, parked just a few blocks away from Clara's house. He had been on his way to see her. The news hit me like a physical blow. The world, which I had controlled for so long, was spinning out of my control. The truth, the secret I had held like a weapon, was now out in the open. My mother was a widow, and a whole other family was grieving a man they thought was theirs alone. The funeral was a bizarre, surreal experience. My mother was a wreck, and I was a silent, stoic statue. I watched as people from my father's work came to pay their respects, their words of condolences ringing hollow in my ears. I saw Clara and Ella from a distance, their faces etched with a grief I couldn't comprehend. They weren't supposed to be there. I was the real victim, wasn't I? The daughter who had been lied to, the one who had to suffer the consequences of his betrayal. But as I looked at my mother's tear-stained face and the quiet, stoic grief of Clara and Ella, I realized that I was just a part of the wreckage my father had left behind. My revenge had cost me more than I ever could have imagined. It had cost me my father, and it had cost me a part of my own humanity. If you want to know what happens next, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you're the first to know when a new video is uploaded. The truth came out after the funeral. My father's lawyer, a kind old man with a worried expression, called my mother and me into his office. He explained that my father had two families and that he had been supporting both of them. He had a secret bank account, a second will, and a second life that no one knew about. My mother, my beautiful, naive mother, finally understood. She didn't scream or cry. She just sat there, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. She looked at me, her eyes searching for an answer. "Did you know?" she asked, her voice a fragile whisper. I couldn't lie. Not anymore. "Yes," I said, my voice barely audible. "I knew." Her face crumpled. The betrayal wasn't just from my father. It was from me, her own daughter. She stood up and walked out of the room, leaving me alone with the lawyer and the wreckage of my life. The shame, the guilt, the regret hit me all at once. I had been so focused on my revenge, on my own selfish desires, that I had failed to see the people I was hurting. My mother, the woman who had sacrificed everything for me, was now a broken shell of a person. I had used my father's lies to get what I wanted, but in the end, the only thing I had was an empty life and a broken family. The money, the clothes, the cars, all of it felt worthless. It was a monument to my own greed, a tombstone for the person I used to be. My mother never forgave me. She moved in with her sister, leaving me alone in the big empty house that felt more like a prison than a home. I tried to apologize, to explain my actions, but she wouldn't listen. "You used his lies," she said, her voice cold and unforgiving. "You used my pain for your own gain. I can never look at you the same way again." Her words were a sentence, a life without her love and forgiveness. The house, once filled with the ghosts of a happy family, was now a tomb for my broken relationships. I tried to reach out to Clara and Ella, but they wanted nothing to do with me. I was the other woman's daughter, the child of the man who had lied to them for years. I was a reminder of their own pain, and they wanted nothing to do with it. I was alone, completely and utterly alone. The money eventually ran out. My father's assets were divided between his two families, and I was left with a small inheritance, not enough to maintain the lavish lifestyle I had grown accustomed to. I was forced to sell the house, to give up the car, and to move into a small apartment. The world I had built for myself, a world of luxury and power, had crumbled around me. The silence in my apartment was deafening. There were no more hushed phone calls, no more hurried goodbyes, no more secrets to exploit, just me and the bitter reality of my choices. I had won the battle, but I had lost the war. The price of my revenge was a life of solitude and regret. The cold satisfaction I once felt had been replaced by a gnawing emptiness. Years passed. I was a different person, a shadow of the girl I used to be. The anger had faded, replaced by a quiet sorrow. I worked a menial job, my artistic dreams long forgotten. I saw a picture of my mother once, a post from my aunt's social media. She was smiling, surrounded by family. She looked happy, finally free from the lies that had haunted her for so long. I saw a picture of Ella, all grown up, a beautiful woman with a kind smile, a family of her own. She was a woman who had found happiness despite the lies she was told. I had destroyed my family, my relationships, and my own happiness, all for a short-lived taste of power. I had become the villain of my own story, and I was the one who had to live with the consequences. I sat alone in my apartment, the city lights twinkling outside my window. The guilt was a constant companion, a heavy blanket of regret. My father had been a liar, a man who had made a terrible choice, but I had been a monster, a cold, calculating child who had used his lies to destroy him. I had blackmailed him for money, for a life I didn't deserve, and in the process, I had destroyed my own. The silence in my apartment was a constant reminder of my choices. The phone never rang. The door never opened. I was alone, and I would be alone for the rest of my life. My father's secret had been his undoing, but my use of that secret had been mine. I had lived my life for revenge, and in the end, it was a hollow victory. I had won the battle, but lost everything that mattered. Thanks for watching. If you like this story and want to see more content like it, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.